In early February 2025, trade tensions between the United States and Canada escalated following President Donald Trump's announcement of significant tariffs. Citing concerns over illegal immigration and the influx of fentanyl into the US, Trump declared a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, with a reduced 10% tariff specifically on Canadian energy products. These measures were set to take effect on February 4, 2025. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced retaliatory tariffs, imposing a 25% duty on $30 billion worth of US goods starting February 4, with plans to extend these tariffs to an additional $125 billion of US goods after a 21-day public consultation. The targeted products include American beer, wine, bourbon, fruits, fruit juices, clothing, sports equipment, and household appliances. Following discussions between Trump and Trudeau, an agreement was reached to delay the implementation of these tariffs for 30 days. Canada committed to enhancing border security measures, including appointing a fentanyl czar and collaborating on a joint strike force with the US to combat drug trafficking. These concessions, some of which had been previously announced, led to mixed reactions within Canada. Despite the temporary pause, concerns persist about the potential economic impact of the proposed tariffs. Economists warn that such measures could increase consumer prices, disrupt supply chains, and strain the long-standing trade relationship between the US and Canada. The situation remains fluid, with both nations engaging in negotiations to find a more permanent resolution before the new deadline. Recent developments indicate that Canada is adjusting its oil export strategies in response to evolving trade, dynamics with the United States, and increasing demand from Asian markets, particularly China. Canada's oil industry, specifically pipeline operator Trans Mountain, anticipates increased interest in its pipeline system, especially if these US tariffs are implemented. The Trans Mountain pipeline, which can transport up to 890,000 barrels per day from Alberta to Canada's Pacific coast, has been operating at approximately 80% capacity. The company expects that the tariffs will lead to a rise in shipments to Asia, particularly China, as exporters seek alternative markets. The Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, which began operations in May 2024, has tripled the flow of crude oil from Alberta to Canada's Pacific coast, reaching a capacity of 890,000 barrels per day. This expansion provides Canadian producers with greater access to Asian markets, reducing reliance on the US. In recent months, major refiners in China, Japan, South Korea, and Brunei have purchased cargoes from the expanded pipeline. For instance, in September 2024, Chinese private refiner Rongsheng Petrochemical secured multiple cargoes of Canadian crude. Canada's strategic pivot towards Asia is driven by several factors. Market diversification, reducing dependence on the US market mitigates risks associated with trade disputes and tariff impositions. Demand alignment. Asian countries, particularly China, have a growing demand for heavy crude oil, which aligns well with Canada's export offerings. Economic benefits. Accessing high-demand markets in Asia presents opportunities for Canadian producers to achieve better pricing and expand their customer base. Despite Canada's efforts to position itself as a leader in climate action, including implementing a nationwide carbon tax, the country continues to invest heavily in oil extraction projects. The Trans Mountain pipeline has become emblematic of this contradiction, as it facilitates increased oil exports to global markets, particularly China. Critics argue that such investments undermine Canada's emissions reduction targets and highlight the challenges of balancing economic growth with environmental commitments. Canada is a significant player in the global oil industry, ranking among the top oil-producing nations worldwide. Here is a detailed comparison of Canada's oil production relative to other leading countries. As of 2023, the top oil-producing countries and their approximate daily production figures are United States, 12.91 million barrels per day, 22% of global production; Saudi Arabia, 11.13 million barrels per day, 11%; Russia, 10.25 million barrels per day, 11%; Canada, 5.76 million barrels per day, 6%; China, 5.26 million barrels per day, 5%. Collectively, These top 5 countries account for over half of the world's total oil production. Canada's oil production has seen significant growth over the past decades. In 2019, the country produced an average of 4.7 million barrels per day, with 64% derived from unconventional oil sands. By 2023, production increased to approximately 5.76 million barrels per day, solidifying Canada's position as the 4th largest oil producer globally. Canada boasts the 3rd largest proven oil reserves worldwide, estimated at approximately 180 billion barrels, primarily located in Alberta's oil sands. This vast reserve base underpins Canada's significant role in the global energy landscape. A substantial portion of Canada's oil production is destined for export. In 2023, crude oil exports reached a record high of 4 million barrels per day, accounting for 81% of the country's total production. Notably, 98% of these exports were directed to the United States, highlighting the integrated nature of the North American energy market. Canada's export economy is diverse, encompassing a range of industries that contribute significantly to its GDP. Building upon the previously mentioned key export commodities, here are additional details. Mineral fuels and oils. In 2023, Canada's exports in this category were valued at approximately $43.40 billion, accounting for a significant portion of the country's export revenue. This category includes crude oil, petroleum gas, and refined petroleum products. The United States remains the primary destination for these exports, underscoring the integrated nature of the North American energy market. Vehicles. The automotive sector is a major contributor to Canada's exports, with vehicles accounting for about 63.68 billion in export revenue in 2023. This includes passenger cars, SUVs, and light trucks. The majority of these vehicles are manufactured in Ontario and Quebec, with a significant portion exported to the United States. Machinery, including nuclear reactors and boilers. Machinery exports, encompassing a wide range of industrial and technological equipment, contributed approximately 42.46 billion in export value. Electronic components and telecommunications equipment, valued at approximately 16.01 billion in 2023. This category covers a broad range of products used in various applications. Key export destinations include the United States and Mexico, facilitated by trade agreements like the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA. Canada and China have developed a significant trade relationship over the past few decades, with China emerging as Canada's 2nd largest trading partner after the United States. This relationship encompasses a wide array of goods and services, reflecting the economic interdependence between the two nations. In 2022, bilateral trade between Canada and China reached substantial figures. Canada exported goods worth approximately 25.4 billion to China, while imports from China stood at about 62.1 billion, resulting in a trade deficit of 36.7 billion for Canada. In 2023, Canada's exports to China were valued at approximately $2.6 billion, with key commodities contributing significantly to this trade. Here's a detailed breakdown of the primary export categories. Oilseeds and oleaginous fruits, valued at $3.84 billion. This category, dominated by canola, experienced a remarkable growth rate of 75.21% year over year. The surge was attributed to increased demand following the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions in China and the normalization of market access for Canadian producers. Notably, in the first quarter of 2023, canola exports reached $1.27 billion, marking a 331.65% increase compared to the same period in the previous year. Ores, slag, and ash, valued at $3.58 billion. This segment includes various metal ores, with iron and copper being significant contributors. Iron ore exports to China totaled $2.5 billion, 15.58% year-over-year growth in copper exports amounted to $1.6 billion, representing a 13.57% increase. These metals are essential for China's industrial activities, driving consistent demand. Mineral fuels and oils. 2.40 billion. Coal is a primary component of this category. In 2023, Canadian coal exports to China were valued at $3.04 billion, though this represented a 12.93% decline from the previous year. The decrease is partly due to China's renewed coal trade with Australia, which intensified competition. Pulp. Of wood and related materials, $2.30 billion. Chemical wood pulp exports reached $2.21 billion in 2023, experiencing a modest growth of 1.98% year-over-year. This steady demand underscores China's need for raw materials in its paper and packaging industries. Cereals, $149 billion. Cereals, including wheat and barley, have seen increased exports to China, driven by the country's evolving food, consumption patterns, and the need to supplement domestic production. Between 2019 and 2023, cereal exports from Canada to China grew at an annual rate of 19%. In 2022, Canada's imports from China reached a record high of approximately 100 billion CAD, marking a 16% increase from the previous year. This surge underscores the deepening economic ties between the two nations. Key import commodities. Canada's imports from China encompass a diverse range of products. In 2022, the primary import categories included consumer goods, $31 billion. CADE. This category covers a broad spectrum of products, including household items, clothing, and personal care products. Electronic and electrical equipment. 28 billion CAD imports in this sector highlight China's role as a major supplier of electronics to Canada. These figures illustrate the significant role that consumer goods and electronics play in Canada's import portfolio from China, reflecting the strong demand for these products in the Canadian market. For those who may not be aware of the reasons behind these strategic moves and the growing tensions between Canada and the United States, let's take a quick look at the background. Let's take a quick pause. If you've enjoyed the video so far, could we ask a small favor? Hitting the like button helps us reach a broader audience, and sharing your thoughts or feedback in the comments makes an even bigger impact. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back in. Canada-US relations and trade tensions in December 2024 at a meeting held at Mar-a-Lago with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Then President-elect Donald Trump proposed that if impending US tariffs harmed Canada's economy, the nation might consider joining as the 51st state of the United States. He even dubbed Trudeau Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada and showed an eagerness to continue talks regarding tariffs and trade. In early 2025, disagreements between Canada and the United States intensified following a series of statements and policy suggestions from US President Donald Trump. Central to the debate were President Trump's proposals that Canada should contemplate statehood as the 51st US state and his administration's enforcement of hefty tariffs on Canadian products. During a press conference at Mar-a-Lago on January 7, 2025, when asked if Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could offer any solution to avoid the looming tariffs, President Trump replied, "What I'd like to see is Canada become our 51st state." Further reinforcing this viewpoint, Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, stating, "We pay hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada. Why? There is no reason. We don't need anything they have. We have unlimited energy, should make our own cars, and have more lumber than we could ever use. Without this massive subsidy, Canada ceases to exist as a viable country." Harsh, but true. Therefore, Canada should become our cherished 51st state. Much lower taxes and far better military protection for the people of Canada, and no tariffs. In addition to these comments, President Trump made several other statements that further strained relations between the US and Canada. In January 2025, he remarked, "They don't essentially have a military, they have a very small military." He also stated, "We're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect Canada." Moreover, Trump criticized Canada for its alleged prohibition on US banks, asking, What's that all about? These statements coincided with his administration's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, with a reduced 10% tariff on energy exports. The US government defended these tariffs as necessary.